just to avoid it completely because it's a real pain in the butt. Hi everyone, it's Lindey. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the most common eBay customer service issues and discuss the best ways to handle those issues so that you make sure that you protect your eBay seller account.
Hi, I'm Lindey, a real-life work-from-home mom with multiple online businesses. I like to buy stuff, sell stuff, make money while saving money, and have some fun in the process. Be sure to subscribe if you'd like to learn how you can do it too, and follow my journey with new videos every week.
So if you're a seller on the eBay platform, you've probably already figured out that it's not just about listing items for sale and making money. There is a good amount of customer service that's involved. And sometimes a customer service issue arises and you might not know how to fix it in the best possible way. Well, we're gonna go over all of that right now. So the first one I wanted to talk about has a little less to do with the customer and more to do with you as the eBay seller. And that is when you are going to find the items to do your shipping and you find that either the item that somebody has purchased is damaged or you just can't find it at all. And I know I cannot be the only one that has gone to go find something to do shipping and then you just can't locate it. And you get that pit in your stomach where you're like, where is this thing? Someone has already paid for it. You're supposed to ship it out. And then you end up tearing through all of your inventory just trying to find this one little thing. And then you just can't find it. Nightmare. I feel like this is one of the most common issues that sellers deal with. And since it is so common, there is a high likelihood that if you don't handle the situation in the proper way, you can actually end up damaging your eBay seller account. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it first. So let's say you are just completely out of luck, you absolutely cannot find it, or maybe you did find it and you dropped it and it's broken, or maybe you didn't see a flaw before you listed it, maybe it's a t-shirt that has a big hole in it, and you just aren't comfortable sending it to the buyer in that condition. So how do you handle that situation? Well, you're obviously going to have to cancel the sale. If you can't fulfill the order, the only option is to cancel it and give the buyer back their money. But there is a very strong strategic trick that you should do when you cancel that order. When you go to cancel an order, you're going to have several different options to pick from. One of those is damaged or out of stock. That would be your first initial instinct, is to select that because you cannot fulfill the order because you either damaged the item was damaged and you didn't realize it when you listed it, or you are out of stock and you don't have it to sell. But selecting that option is actually going to hurt your seller status. That's right. They don't tell you that before you check it, but it's true. When you select that option, when you go to cancel an order, that actually means that that transaction is counted as a defect in your seller status. And as an eBay seller, you're only allowed so many defects in a time period in order to remain a top-rated seller. But even if you're not worried about maintaining a top-rated seller status, if you have too many defects, it can put you in dangerous territory with eBay, and your account could potentially be suspended due to too many defects. Now, the number of defects that you're allowed to have on your eBay seller account really does depend on you as the seller and how many items you've actually sold in a certain amount of time. Last I checked, they either do it based on number of transactions or by percentages based on the amount that you sell. So if you're a lower volume seller and you sell less than 200 items in a 60-day period, then you're considered low volume and it goes off a specific number of defects. Then if you sell over 200 items in a 60-day period, you're considered a high volume seller and they go off of a percentage, which is usually about a 0.5% defect rate is what you're allowed to have. But you can find out all of this information if you just go to your eBay seller dashboard. There's usually a widget somewhere in the middle of your seller dashboard that tells you all of your seller ranking and status information. So the most important takeaway is you do not want defects. You need to try to avoid a defect at all costs. So over the years, there is a system that I use whenever this issue arises. And this is exactly what I do, and it has been working to protect my account from defects. The first thing to remember is that you're disappointing a buyer. The last thing that you want to do is make a buyer angry, because you would like for them to come back and buy from you again. And the last thing you want is for a buyer to complain about you to eBay. So you have to remember that good customer service is more important than just protecting your defect rate. So let's have a hypothetical situation. Let's say I sold this candle to a buyer, but unfortunately, I dropped it. And let's say it's shattered into 100 pieces and there's no saving it. Or that same candle, perhaps I didn't drop it. Maybe I just can't find the stupid thing. Whichever the situation, you can handle it the same with the buyer. What I always do is I will contact the buyer and I will send them a message in eBay and apologize for whatever reason I cannot send them the item. So now I don't tell the buyer if I can't find an item. That's something I did want to make sure I point out, because that does sound a tad bit unprofessional, especially because now with the kind of merchandise and the way I'm listing merchandise, it doesn't necessarily mean that I've lost the item. It could just mean that there was a quantity adjustment issue, or maybe I oversold it, because I do have multiple quantities of a lot of items, and sometimes there can be an issue and maybe I miscount. Maybe I thought that I had 5 of something, but I only had 4, and then I end up overselling. So usually what I'll do in that situation is I will, apologize to the buyer. I tell them that, that there was some sort of an error in bookkeeping and I'm completely out of stock and oversold. Apologize profusely. If the item was damaged, I would tell them, I'm so sorry, but I didn't realize that this item was damaged and I cannot send it to you. And then what I do is I tell the buyer that they are welcome to select another similar item from my store, and I will gladly ship that to them instead of the item that they purchased. And if they don't want to select a new item, to let me know and I will just cancel the order and refund their money immediately. Now, adding this to the message is crucial, because when you do go to cancel the order, which you need to wait until the buyer gets back with you before you cancel it, but if the buyer says, go ahead and cancel the order and refund my money, at that point, you'd go to cancel the order, and the option that you would select is buyer requested cancellation. And the reason why you don't want to just jump ahead and cancel the order and select that the buyer requested cancellation is because you need some sort of track record in eBay to show eBay, if there's any question, that the buyer did in fact ask you to cancel the order and you're not just trying to play the system. Because if that's something that you abuse, eBay is going to catch you. If you're a seller that's always canceling orders and you're always claiming that the buyer is requesting the cancellation when there is zero paper trail to prove that, then you're damaging yourself. Because I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that eBay contacts the buyer and lets them know that there is an order canceled successfully at their request. And the last thing you want to happen is a buyer to contact eBay and go, I never asked to cancel that order, I wanted it. Because then that's gonna have eBay looking right at you, and they're gonna be questioning if you're trying to pull some shady stuff to avoid defects. So bottom line, if you cannot fulfill an order, contact the buyer, apologize profusely, let them know that you cannot fulfill their order, ask them if they want to substitute it from something else in your store, and if they don't want to do that, ask them if they'd like to cancel and get a refund. And then after they respond, go ahead and cancel the order as buyer requested cancellation. And then the order will be canceled, bullet dodged, and you will not take a hit in your defects. But please remember, do not abuse it. Do not take advantage of the situation and purposefully oversell things, because eBay will catch on if you're doing too much of that. And the last thing you want to do is draw negative attention to yourself as a seller. The next common issue is a buyer receives an item from you that is damaged. Now, I'm not talking about damage when it comes to the United States Postal Service or UPS or FedEx. I'm talking about an item comes damaged because you as the seller did not properly package it. Maybe it was glass and something broke off, maybe something leaked out of a bottle. For whatever reason, the buyer received the item and they cannot use it as they expected to because it's broken or something's not full. Now, in these kind of situations, I tend to offer a partial refund if it's something as simple as something leaked, or I will just give the buyer a full refund if the item is broken or damaged beyond use. And the reason I do that is, again, because of your seller ranking and defects. Because if a buyer receives a damaged item and they're unhappy, chances are they're going to open up a case with eBay, or they're going to try to return it as an item not as described. And if you're a seller, you probably know that an item not as described, or an INAD return, is the worst kind that you can have. Because it's going to result in you as the seller having to pay return postage to get the item back to you so that the buyer can get their money back. eBay also keeps track of how many INAD returns you have as a seller, and if you have too many, you will be charged extra fees every month. And so, to avoid an item not as described return, I will almost always just give the buyer a full refund as long as there's proof. That means that they sent a picture or something like that. Pretty much just a picture is the only way that they can prove it. Or if it's something like a leaky bottle, I will offer a partial refund to try to keep them from opening any cases within eBay. Yes, you'll be out the money. It'll be extremely frustrating, but you will save yourself an item not as described return or a case being open. And it'll also save you any return shipping that you would have to pay as a result of those issues. And now another common issue with customer service that is in that same area is false item not as described returns. Now, unfortunately, this is something that sellers have to deal with extremely often because buyers have come so used to filing those returns as item not as described just to avoid not having to pay return shipping because they want to return the item to the seller. And unfortunately, there is not an easy fix for this. I have spoken to a lot of sellers that have ended up just eating bogus costs because of these INAD claims. And I've even spoken with sellers that have been forced to pay extra fees every single month just because their INAD return percentage was so high. The best thing that you can do to battle this is if a buyer does open a false INAD claim, you can't really fight it in the moment, but what you can do is you can go to the eBay Help Center. They are starting to develop a new eBay seller help hub. And what you can do is you can actually file a report on that buyer and let eBay know that you believe that that buyer filed a false INAD return and abused the return policy that eBay has. So it doesn't get you your money back, but it does give you a little bit of peace of mind that you as the seller have something that you can do to let eBay know that that buyer abused the policy. And then something else that you can do is you can go add that buyer to your blocked bidder list on eBay so that they can't buy from you again. Now let's talk about one of the worst customer service issues that gives me just this pit in my stomach, and that is either mixing up packages or sending a buyer the wrong item. It's a mistake that can happen. It's really infuriating, but if you have two packages, you accidentally mix up the labels, this person gets that person's thing and this person gets that person's thing, and then you've got two buyers that are messaging you going, hey, I didn't get my thing, and then you as the seller is just sitting there pulling your hair out because you cannot believe that you mixed up the packages. I have done it. Thank goodness I have not done it more than a very small handful of times, but still sucks when it happens. There's a couple of different ways that you can handle this situation. Really, the entire situation kind of sucks when you've swapped packages. The right way to handle it is technically the longest, hardest way, and it's going to cost you as the seller more money. The faster way will cost you less money, but depending on what items got mixed up, you might want to go with the longer way over the shortest way. So situation may vary, but let's say that the items are $15 items. You're not really out a ton of money. The fastest way to handle that situation would be to apologize to each buyer, give them a full refund, and let them know that you do not have the item to send to them. You can tell them, that they received the item in error, that you're very, very sorry, give them a full refund, and maybe even offer to give them a really good deal on something else in your store if they wanted to come back and shop again. But that is without a doubt the fastest way to handle the situation. You will be out the merchandise and you will be out the money refunding them, but that gets the situation over super fast. Now, the proper way to handle this situation would be to have both of the buyers open an item not as described, and you as the seller pay return shipping to get the items back to you. Once the items arrive, then you send the item to the correct buyer. Now, because this is such a lengthy process and it is a huge inconvenience to the buyer, when this happens, I will almost always also refund each buyer 100% of their money and still send them the item when I get it. And that's just customer service best practices. You're gonna be out the merchandise, you're gonna be out the return shipping, and you're gonna be out the shipping sending them the proper item. But it was your mistake as the seller. It's not the buyer's issue. They wanted the item that they bought. The best thing for you to do is rectify the situation by giving them their money back for the inconvenience and sending them the item as soon as you get it back from the other buyer. Something else that sellers might do is they might actually send the label to the buyer to have the buyer send the item to the other buyer. The seller sends the buyer a shipping label to send it to the other buyer. Now, I don't feel like that's a practice that every seller should just automatically do, because I feel like there's too many areas for this whole situation to go bad. You know, you don't know what kind of condition that buyer is going to be shipping that item to the other buyer. You don't know if they're a smoker. You don't know if they opened it up and used it. And so you're risking a negative feedback when you do that. That's why I would rather eat the shipping and have the buyers send the item straight back to me so that I can check it over and send it to the proper buyer. But either way, it's a really messy situation. Avoid it completely just by double checking your labels and making sure that you're paying attention when you're putting the labels on the packages, just to avoid it completely, because it's a real pain in the butt. And then the same kind of idea if you accidentally send the buyer the wrong item. I just recently in one of my live streams talked about a situation where I messed up and I sent a bottle of the wrong vitamins to a buyer. And really, because it was my mistake, I didn't double check to make sure that it was the correct bottle. I did way too much assuming when I was pulling the merchandise and getting it ready for shipping. Way too much assuming. Always double check things, Lindey. Good God. Because that was my mistake, I knew I still had the correct vitamins. So I just basically ate the loss of the item that I sent to them, and I sent them the proper vitamins, and I just let them keep the ones that I sent by mistake. And the reason why I did that is, again, because of inconvenience. Having to return things for a buyer can be really super inconvenient because they're not used to shipping things on a regular basis like us sellers are. So I didn't want to, inconvenience my buyer. Just keep those vitamins and I'll send you the correct ones first thing tomorrow morning. And the buyer was very, very happy that I handled it in a timely manner, and I really did ship the item to her when I said I was going to. Now let's talk about issues with undercharging the buyer shipping. This is a situation that does arise, and again, it's really super frustrating, but if there is an issue and the buyer does not pay for the full amount of the shipping label, really the best practice is, as the seller, just to eat the extra expense. So this might happen if you charge calculated shipping to the buyer in your listing, but what happens is you don't have the accurate weight information in the listing when the buyer makes their purchase. So let's say you have an item that weighs 4 pounds, but when you created the listing, you thought it only weighed 3 pounds. And that's what happens when we assume, right? We're all learning something here. Stop assuming and make sure you know. So eBay thinks that you need to have a label that weighs 3 pounds charged to the buyer, when in all actuality, you actually need a 4-pound label. And then it ends up happening that the buyer only pays a portion of the shipping and you have to eat the shipping that you had undercharged. The worst thing that you can do is reach out and contact the buyer and let them know that they didn't pay enough for the shipping label and ask for more money. So don't do that. Learn from your mistake, move on, eat the cost. And then the last big customer service issue that I've had experience with and that I hear people talk about is buyer threatening negative feedbacks. Maybe the buyer received their item in the mail, they're not completely happy, or they're happy with the item, they're just wanting to cause an issue so that they can try to get their money back and still keep the items. And they'll try to accomplish this by threatening you as the seller and tell you that they're going to leave you negative feedback if you don't comply with their demands. The best thing that you can do as a seller if this happens to you is just rest assured, as soon as that buyer threatens to leave you negative feedback and messages, you're the one in control, not them. Because feedback extortion is extremely prohibited by eBay, and eBay does not take it lightly. So if you have a buyer threatening to leave you negative feedback if you don't comply with their demands, the best thing that you can do is contact eBay, have them start looking into the messages and make notes, because if that buyer does end up leaving you negative feedback, all you'll have to do is let eBay know and they will remove that negative feedback for extortion. So whenever I do get a buyer that's a little bit extra snippy, I almost wish that they would threaten negative feedback, because I know if they threaten it in messages, I am fully protected, because they just violated so many policies because they're trying to be that kind of buyer. So bottom line, if a buyer threatens to leave you negative feedback, do not panic and do not give the buyer what they want, because the minute they threaten you with negative feedback, they have basically out-talked themselves out of everything. You don't have to give them anything. Just make sure to call eBay, have eBay start looking into the messages and start making notes on your account. All right, you guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If there is any other specific eBay customer service issues that you've had to deal with, maybe I didn't mention, please put it down in the comments below, because I do like to learn about other issues that maybe I am unfamiliar with, and I'll also do my best to go through the comments and help you with those situations, because I do feel like good customer service is vital for being an eBay seller. You always want to make sure to uphold really high standards. That way buyers on the eBay platform keep coming back to buy again. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please do give it a thumbs up, and also remember to share it with somebody who might need this information. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave if you haven't already. I do have a lot of useful information down in my video description if you want to open up that box and take a look. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys with my next video. Bye-bye.